You know, in the 1960s, Chicago was definitely a happening place for music. Now, not only, of course, was there Chicago blues music, but there was a great rock and roll scene in Chicago in the 60s. And it kind of all centered around Old Town, Wells Street, and all that in Chicago. Great bands came out. Now, I've already talked about, and you know, I've interviewed Tom Duty of the Crying Shames. And here's a link to those episodes if you haven't checked that out. The Crying Shames were my favorite group at the time coming out of Chicago. But there were a lot of good groups. There was the Buckinghams, the New Colony Six, the Roving Kind, the Shadows of Night, and even Aorta. Now, this band that we're going to talk about in this episode only recorded 2 albums. And I guess you can say both of them are kind of concept albums, because the band took their style and some of their song titles from a horror writer. The band is called H.P. Lovecraft, and we're about to spin on a wild trip with one of those bands that came out of Chicago. Are you ready? Let's drop the needle. Now, right at the beginning, let me ask for some help from my Facebook friends that are in the group about the Chicago classic rock in the 60s, because when I was researching H.P. Lovecraft, there aren't very many photographs of the band, and there's very little information about them. So anybody that has any other information, please leave it in the comments. I'd be loving to hear more about this band. H.P. Lovecraft started when George Edwards recorded a version of the Chip Taylor song, Any Way That You Want Me. To help him record this, members of the Chicago band, the Roving Kind, backed him up. He was also joined by Dave Michaels, who had a 4-octave singing voice. The single was released in 1967, and it was put out under the name of H.P. Lovecraft, where what happened was the record label suggested that be the name of the band. But now they needed a band. So auditions were held, and Tony Cavalieri came in on lead guitar, Mike Tegza on drums, and Tom Skidmore on bass. But Skidmore soon left and was replaced by Jerry McGeorge, the guitarist for the band The Shadows of Night. The band created a blend of folk music, rock music, and psychedelia, and they wrote some of their own songs. And so in 1967, they released their first album, which is called H.P. Lovecraft. And let's get the glare out of there. There we go. And if I zoom into this, you can see that I actually bought this album for 20 cents. Great songs include Wayfaring Stranger, covers of Chet Power's Let's Get Together, of Randy Newman's I've Been Wrong Before, and Fred Neil's That's the Bag I'm In. But side 2 shines with the lead off The White Ship, which is a big hit, The Time Machine, and That's How Much I Love You Baby, More or Less, all of which was original compositions. Now, the song The White Ship, I said it was a big hit. Well, it was a big hit on college and FM radio stations, and when I was a disc jockey, I played the heck out of that song. The band toured to support the album, appearing on the West Coast, where promoter Bill Graham loved them and booked them repeatedly at the Fillmore and the Winterland Ballroom. The band became an underground sensation in the San Francisco Bay Area. So in 1968, they pulled up their roots from Chicago and moved to San Francisco. 8 weeks after this move, Jerry McGeorge, the bass player, quit. He was replaced by Jeffrey Boyan, who had previously been in the Chicago band Saturday's Children. And they continued to play many gigs. And in fact, one of their gigs on May 11th, 1968, at the Fillmore was recorded for a live album. But the album didn't come out until 1991, many years after H.P. Lovecraft had broken up. For their second album, the band decided they'd record in Los Angeles. But the problem was, with all of their touring and live gigs, they really didn't have enough material to record another album. But of course, the label wanted an album. So they went into the studio, and their second album is largely improvised in the studio. Now, Wikipedia states that this is probably the first album to be recorded where all of the members were under the effects of LSD. Possibly so. It's definitely a trippy album. I like Spin, 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 Blue Jack of Diamonds, At the Mountain of Madness, Mobius Trip, High Flying Bird, and the Ken Nordine song, Nothing's Boy. But the album didn't sell, and in fact, it didn't even chart. And so, H.P. Lovecraft broke up. A spin-off band called Lovecraft was formed with George Edwards, Michael Tigza, and they were joined by two members of the Chicago band Aorta, Jim Dollinger on guitar and Michael Bean on bass, and a new keyboard player, Marty Greb, who had been with the Chicago band the Buckinghams. So you had a lot of Chicago musicians jump in to the new band Lovecraft and try to keep that whole H.P. Lovecraft mystique going. They got a new record contract, but Edwards actually left before they recorded another album. So the rest of the group decides, we'll record the album anyway, and they call it Valley of the Moon. And it's not psychedelia, it's more California laid-back rock. But it didn't sell, and in fact, it didn't even chart. They then decided to change their name to Lovecraft and recorded another album called We Love You Whoever You Are in 1975. But it didn't sell, it didn't chart, and the band disbanded. So leaving just 2 studio albums and 1 live album, H.P. Lovecraft left some pretty amazing music in just their very, very short career. Take a listen to The White Ship and then sail into the mountains of madness. Thanks for watching, and until next time, keep it rockin'. If you liked this episode, hit the like button, and you can also leave me a comment down below, and I'll respond to you. If you subscribe, we'll let you know when future episodes come out.